Hi and welcome to the new demo lesson where we are going to see how to apply two different backpressure strategies on Apache Spark structured streaming jobs. So not both, but the first strategy will rely on Apache Kafka and the dataset, which is very simple, generated like that. Here the idea is to show you more how to limit the throughput rather than having a complex dataset to work with again. And the data processing logic will use a native feature of Apache Kafka integration, which is the max offsets per trigger that controls the number of offsets that will be processed in the microbatch. So let me now start the demo, and I will start with the Docker Compose. Again, I have only Zookeeper and Kafka here. And now I will run the data generator, and just after generating the first record, I will start my consumer. Okay, I have my topics, I generated the first records, and I will start the consumer. And what you should see here is at most 5 records in your screen. So let's check it out. And yes, you can see that each time we have no more than 5 records processed in the Kafka consumer. So now, just to show you that it's really this feature that limits the throughput, I will increase this number to 20, and here you should obviously see this the number of rows printed increase. And yes, you can see that we have more data processed each time. And that was the first strategy, the strategy that relies on the data source capabilities. The second strategy requires some coding. So here the idea is to limit our processing with some custom logic. In this scenario, you will typically use it if you cannot define some global, when you have only some global configuration for backpressure. So if you take a look in the previous demo, this 5 or 20 is limited to all rows. And for example, if you have one tenant or one user sending you too much data, your microbatch will end up by processing only this consumer's data, which obviously will delay the processing of the other users. Whereas here you define some low-level backpressure, and this low-level backpressure consists of having one, I would say, backpressure category. So for me it will be a flag even if a number is even or odd. And for each group, I will apply some limitation, and I will limit the number of records we can process to 5. And how I will do that? So to start, in each microbatch, I will generate 15 records. And I will use a for each batch sync, meaning that it's a kind of custom logic I can put here and simply control the throughput at this is even flag level. And in microbatch number, we are processing the first microbatch. Of course, we don't have any backpressure data yet. And in that case, we should simply skip this part. But if it's not the case, we are reading some JSON files from the backpressure storage. And we are doing some union with the real-time dataset, so that we receive only a single dataset to process. And just afterwards, we apply the window function. So the window function is like a grouping, but it gives you access to some interesting functions. Like for me here is the row number. So according to the transformation, I'm doing the grouping by is event flag, and in each group I sort all the records by the timestamp flag in the ascending order. And here, for each group, I'm adding the is backpressured column, where if the row number inside the group is greater than 5, so meaning that I have more than 5 items to process, well, the backpressure flag will be true, otherwise it will be false. And what happens next is that I'm caching the data set, so that's important because it avoids rereading and reprocessing the input twice. And for the case when I have some isBackpressure records, I simply writing them on my local storage with a batch number directory, to the batch number directory. And for the remaining rows, I am doing the backpressure flag to false, and I'm simply printing them as a part of my final output. In the end, I'm freeing the resources with the unpersist. And so let me run the code. You will see that in each micro batch, we will see data from the next and from the current and from the previous micro batch, so from the backpressure storage. So that's the first one. It's normal that we don't see it, but now if you are careful enough, you should see, for example, that for the second micro batch we have some backpressure records plus some real-time ones here, and same for the odd numbers. And that's all for this demo. You saw two different strategies: a global strategy that you control when you control the input with some configuration, and a kind of low-level strategy when, of course, you have to write some code, but you can control the throughput a much better way. Exactly with if you need some, for example, per client or per tenant backpressure strategy. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next lesson.